My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, then suddenly claimed I stole $200, $0 from her family estate. She's now threatening to take everything, including our house and a 50-acre land parcel. In a brutal legal battle I never saw coming, I never thought I'd be the guy writing about how my wife turned out to be a cheat, but here I am. The craziest part. It all started with what I thought was just normal marriage trouble, little fights, some neglect, the usual stuff. But then, out of nowhere, everything exploded into a mess I never saw coming. It was like some terrible soap opera, only it was real life. My wife Lisa and I had been together for about 10 years. We got married young, built a life, had a house, a couple of kids, the whole American dream. I worked hard in construction, trying to give her the best life I could afford. She was always a bit bitchy, quick with a sarcastic comment, but I thought that was just her personality. Still, I never suspected she'd cheat or do anything truly malicious. At first, I noticed some strange things. Her phone ringing late at night, secretive texts, her brushing me off when I asked about her day. But I figured it was just work stress or some friend needing support. She was always the type to lie her way out of anything, so I didn't push too hard. I was busy with work, trying to keep everything afloat. Then came the day I found her phone open on the couch and saw a message from someone named Mike. It was pretty explicit, talking about how she loved the way he touched her, how she couldn't wait to see him again. My stomach dropped. I stared at the screen, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. I knew right then she was cheating, no doubt in my mind. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I kept my cool, trying to process what I'd seen. But every little thing about her changed after that. She started acting more distant, more defensive. She'd snap at me over nothing, and when I asked about her strange behavior, she'd call me paranoid, accuse me of spying on her. That's when I realized she was hiding something big. One night I decided to follow her. I needed to see who she was sneaking around with, see if she was really cheating or just accusing me of something stupid. So I waited until she left the house around 8 p.m., claiming she was going out with her book club friends. I followed her in my truck, keeping a safe distance, and what I saw made my blood boil. She went to the neighbor's house, Tom, a guy who used to be nice, but lately I'd been suspicious of him too. She went inside and I parked a little down the street. I saw her get out of her car, wearing tight jeans and a top that showed a lot of skin. They spent over an hour inside. When she finally came out, she looked flushed and happy, way too happy for someone who was just meeting friends. I watched her get into her car and drive back home. I was seething, but I kept my cool. The next day, I waited until she was at work, then looked through her phone again. Found more messages from Tom, flirty, suggestive, full of plans to meet up again. She lied to me about everything, said she was at the gym or visiting her sister. I felt like I'd been punched again. How could she do this? After all these years, after everything we built, it was like she was a different person and I was just some fool who never saw it coming. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but everything pointed to one thing. My wife was cheating on me with our neighbor. The guy I'd always thought was just a friendly guy next door. Now I knew better. I had proof enough to blow everything up. But what I didn't expect was that this wasn't just about some affair. It was about the lies, the betrayal, and what she was planning next. Because shortly after that, she threw another bombshell my way, claiming I stole $200, $0 from her family estate. That's when the real nightmare started. After I found out about Lisa's affair, I thought the worst was behind me, or at least I convinced myself I was done with the shock. But then she dropped the bomb about the money. It was like everything I knew, everything I trusted was crumbling in real time. She called me one evening, her voice sharp, accusing me of stealing from her family estate 200, no less, said I'd been secretly siphoning money, hiding it away, planning to run off with it. I couldn't believe she'd jumped to that kind of lie so quickly. It started with her yelling on the phone, calling me a thief, a liar, a con man. She claimed she'd uncovered bank statements, receipts, and some secret accounts I'd supposedly been hiding from her. I was stunned. I didn't even know what to say. I knew I hadn't taken a cent from her family's estate. I worked hard for what little we had, but now she was accusing me of outright theft. It felt like a punch in the stomach. I demanded she send me the proof. She refused, of course. Said she had her sources. that I'd better prepare for a fight because she was going to take everything, our house, the land, everything. She mentioned lawyers, courts, and some brutal legal battle she was ready to start. I was in shock. How did she go from cheating on me with Tom to suddenly accusing me of stealing a fortune? It was obvious she was trying to cover her own tracks, but I couldn't see how it all fit together yet. The more I dug, the more suspicious I became. I pulled some bank records myself, and I couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. No large withdrawals, no shady transfers. But Lisa wasn't the type to be honest about her money. She always had an excuse for everything, and she knew how to lie convincingly. When I confronted her about the money, she just scoffed and called me an idiot. Said I was too stupid to handle her family's estate, that I was always lazy and untrustworthy. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her accusations, her lies, and what her endgame was. Why would she accuse me of stealing a huge sum just to cover her own affair? It didn't make sense, unless she was planning something even worse. I started to worry about what she might do next. I knew she was the kind of person who would say anything to save herself, especially when cornered. The next morning, I decided I needed to get ahead of this. I contacted my lawyer, told him everything I knew. I wanted to be prepared, just in case she filed for divorce or tried to seize everything. I also started digging into her family's finances, just to see if she had any hidden accounts or assets she wasn't telling me about. It was a mess. I didn't trust her, and honestly, I didn't trust her family either. Meanwhile, Lisa was escalating her threats. She was calling friends, making accusations, and even threatening to take me to court over the land and house. She claimed I was a deadbeat who was trying to steal her inheritance. I knew she was lying, but the way she spun it, it sounded convincing. She was good at lying, better than I was at catching her. Sometimes I wondered if I was just too naive. I felt like I was living in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The betrayal from Lisa, the false accusations about money, and now this looming legal battle, it was all too much. I was angry, hurt, and confused. How could she do this? How could she turn everything we had built into some kind of war? I never wanted any of this. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. But now I was starting to see that maybe I'd been blind all along. I kept telling myself I wouldn't let her destroy me. I was going to fight back, not just for my reputation, but for whatever was left of what we once had. But I also knew I had to be strategic. If she was willing to lie about money and cheat on me, what else was she capable of? I was preparing for a battle that I never asked for, and honestly, I didn't know if I had the strength to win. But I was determined not to go down without a fight. In the days that followed, everything felt like a blur. I was running on adrenaline, trying to piece together what was real and what was just her twisting the story. Every time I looked at her, I saw the same bitchy smirk, the way she dismissed my concerns, like I was some idiot who couldn't see what was right in front of him. But I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I started gathering evidence, texts, emails, bank statements, anything that could prove I was innocent of her ridiculous accusations. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude was getting worse. She became more aggressive, more manipulative. She'd yell at me, call me names, accuse me of everything under the sun. Her favorite was calling me lazy, saying I didn't contribute enough, that I was a deadbeat who was just riding her coattails. She'd throw her weight around, threaten me with lawyers, and even started turning her family against me. Her mother called me a no-good husband, and her father, who used to be respectful, now just looked at me with suspicion. One day, she stormed into the house, furious because I had been talking to a lawyer. She accused me of trying to hide money, said I was planning to run away with her inheritance. She said she'd have me thrown out, take the house, the land, everything. It was like she was trying to turn everyone against me to make herself look like the victim. I was so angry I could barely speak. I told her she was full of shit, that I hadn't done anything wrong, and that she was just trying to cover her own ass. But then she did something that made my blood run cold. She pulled out a document, some kind of legal notice she had gotten from her lawyer. It claimed I had transferred money into secret accounts, that I'd been planning to run off with her family's estate. I looked at it and I knew it was a complete lie. It was a fake, some kind of fabricated paper meant to scare me. She'd obviously paid someone to make it look convincing. That was the moment I realized how deep her lies went. This wasn't just about a cheating wife anymore. It was about her trying to destroy me with lies and manipulation. I started to feel overwhelmed. I was furious, yes, but also scared. What if she actually did have some evidence? What if she managed to turn the courts against me? I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to fight back, but I also knew I needed help. I reached out to a private investigator I'd heard about from a friend. I wanted to see if I could find out if she was hiding anything else, any assets, any secret accounts, anything that could be used against her in court. The investigator was quick. Within a few days, he came back with some surprising news. She had been funneling money into offshore accounts, hidden from me and her family. She'd been transferring large sums to some shell companies. I couldn't believe it. This woman who pretended to be the perfect wife was actually planning to flee with a fortune. That sealed it for me. I knew I had to take action, but I also knew I couldn't do it alone. I had to prepare for a legal war, and I had to be smart. I also started talking to some of her friends, trying to get a clearer picture of her schemes. Turns out, she'd been secretly meeting with lawyers, planning to claim the land and the house in her name alone. She was banking on her family's influence and her charm to win the battle. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I had evidence, and I was ready to expose her lies in court. Meanwhile, her threats kept escalating. She told me she'd ruin me financially, destroy my reputation, and take everything I loved. She said I'd be left with nothing, no house, no land, no respect. I felt the weight of it all crushing down on me. I'd never been a confrontational guy, but now I was ready to stand my ground. I couldn't let her win, not after everything. The betrayal, the lies, the affair with Tom, and now this, she was trying to wipe me out completely. I still loved her, or at least I thought I did, but right now I hated her more than anything. I couldn't believe I married someone so manipulative, so willing to destroy everything we built just to cover her own ass. I told myself I'd get through this, no matter what it took. I would fight for what was mine, for my dignity and for my sanity. I didn't know how it was going to end, but I knew I wouldn't go down without a fight. The legal battle was starting to take shape, and I could feel the pressure mounting. Lisa's accusations about the money, her threats to seize the house and land, and her outright lies about my supposed theft had turned our lives into a nightmare. I spent long nights poring over documents, talking to lawyers, and trying to piece together a defense. Meanwhile, Lisa was relentless, turning her charm on her family, her friends, anyone who would listen. She painted me as a deadbeat husband, a thief, a manipulator. It was like she was trying to rewrite our entire story to fit her narrative. I remember the day I finally got some solid evidence of her offshore accounts. It was a relief, but also a shock. She'd hidden millions in shell companies abroad, and I had the proof that she was planning to run away with her fake wealth. I also found out she'd been laundering money through her family's estate, money I had no idea about. It was staggering. All this time, I thought I was married to a woman who was just a little bitchy, but it turned out she was capable of real deception, even criminal stuff. With the evidence in hand, I sat down with my lawyer. We drafted a legal strategy: get a restraining order, freeze her assets, and demand an accounting of all her financial dealings. I knew I had to act fast before she moved everything out of reach. I also hired a forensic accountant to dig into her financial history. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her lies went. She'd been planning this for years, hiding assets, manipulating her family, and now she was trying to destroy me with false accusations. Meanwhile, Lisa's legal team was doing the same. They filed papers claiming I was trying to steal her inheritance and that I was a violent, untrustworthy husband. She even went as far as claiming I'd physically assaulted her once, which was completely false. I knew she was lying, but I also knew how persuasive her lawyers could be. That's when I realized I needed to be even more careful. I had to present irrefutable proof of her deception, or I'd lose everything. Things got more intense when she threatened to subpoena my bank accounts, my phone records, and even my personal emails. She wanted to dig up dirt, hoping to turn the court against me. I was furious. I'd never been so angry in my life. How could she do this? How could she turn our marriage into some kind of criminal farce? It felt like she was trying to wipe me out completely, to erase me from her life and make me look like the bad guy. I decided I had to fight fire with fire. I hired a private investigator to dig into her past, her associates, and her own family. I wanted to know if there was anything else I should be worried about. Turns out her father had some shady dealings of his own, and her brother was involved in some questionable business ventures. I started to see a pattern of corruption and lies that extended beyond just Lisa. It was like peeling back layers of a rotten onion. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and exhausted. I hated that she was dragging me through this, making me out to be the villain. I kept asking myself how I had missed the signs, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. The worst part was knowing she was still out there, probably laughing behind my back, planning her next move. I had to stay strong for myself and for my kids, but inside I was crumbling. This whole ordeal was changing me. I never thought I'd be someone involved in a legal war over a marriage, but here I was. I had to do everything I could to protect what little was left. I kept telling myself that I'd win, that I'd come out of this stronger, but I also knew that the cost was high. Lisa was playing dirty, and I had to be smarter, more ruthless if I wanted to come out ahead. I wasn't ready to give up, but I was starting to realize that this fight might never really end. The months dragged on, and each day seemed to bring a new twist or bombshell. I was knee-deep in legal battles, forensic reports, and endless negotiations. Lisa's threats grew more vicious. She was now claiming I stolen her family's estate, that I was trying to sell off land behind her back, that I'd hidden millions in offshore accounts to cheat her. She even went as far as hiring her own private investigators to dig up dirt on me, trying to find any weakness to exploit. It was like living in some nightmare where trust was completely eroded and everyone was out to get me. One day, her lawyer filed a motion claiming I had committed financial misconduct and demanded a court order to seize my bank accounts. I was furious. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, but I also knew how persuasive her legal team was. I had to be prepared for the worst. That's when I decided I needed to fight fire with fire. I gathered all my financial documents, proof of my innocence, and hired my own team of forensic accountants. I wanted to show the court that I was clean, that Lisa's accusations were baseless. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior was becoming more erratic. She'd scream at me over the smallest things, call me a liar, a thief, and threaten to destroy me completely. She'd also try to manipulate the kids, telling them I was a bad husband, trying to turn them against me. It hurt more than I can say. I loved those kids, but I knew Lisa was poisoning their minds. I kept my distance, trying to stay calm and focused on my legal strategy, but inside I was crumbling. The worst moment came when Lisa's lawyers presented what they claimed was evidence of my supposed theft: fake bank statements, doctored documents, even fake emails. I looked at the evidence and knew it was all fake. It was a setup. I confronted Lisa about it and she just smirked, saying she had more tricks up her sleeve. I realized she was willing to do anything to win: lie, cheat, manipulate. That's when I knew I had to go all in, expose her lies once and for all. I hired a forensic investigator to look into her offshore accounts and found that she'd been transferring money to a shell company she'd been planning to disappear with millions of her own hidden wealth. It was shocking, but it also gave me the leverage I needed. I filed a motion to freeze her assets, and in court I presented the evidence of her financial deception. The judge was skeptical at first, but when I showed the proof, her entire facade started to crack. At the same time, I started working with a psychologist to help me cope with the emotional toll. I'd been spiraling, feeling betrayed, humiliated, and angry all at once. I'd never thought I'd be in this situation, fighting for my life and my reputation against someone I once loved. But the more I fought, the clearer it became. Lisa wasn't the person I thought she was. She was a manipulative, vindictive woman willing to do anything to get her way. Eventually, the court ordered her to provide full financial disclosures, including her offshore accounts and hidden assets. She refused at first, but when the evidence was presented, she had no choice but to comply. It was a huge blow. to her ego, and I saw her face tighten with rage. I knew I had won a battle, but the war was far from over. She was still threatening to take everything, and I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. Despite all the chaos, I started to realize something important. I couldn't change her, and I couldn't undo her lies. All I could do was protect myself, my kids, and whatever was left of my reputation. I had to stay strong, keep fighting, and not let her destroy me completely. I learned that sometimes the only way to deal with a dishonest, manipulative person is to fight back with the truth, no matter how ugly it gets. I was battered, tired, but determined. I'd come too far to give up now. By the time the court proceedings reached their climax, I was exhausted but also strangely relieved. The lies Lisa had spun, the false accusations, her attempts to wipe me out financially, everything was unraveling. The court ordered her to hand over detailed financial records, including the offshore accounts and shell companies she'd been hiding. She fought it tooth and nail, but in the end, her deception was impossible to deny. Her entire house of cards collapsed under the weight of her lies, and the judge ruled in my favor on most counts. It was a long, brutal process, but I finally felt like I could breathe again. The house, the land, everything she had threatened to seize was legally mine. The only thing left was the emotional fallout. I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman capable of anything to save herself. Her threats, her lies, her cheating, they all came from the same place. She was a person who valued her own interests above everything else, including our marriage and her own family. The aftermath was a mixture of relief and deep sadness. I filed for divorce, and while I knew I'd never get back what I lost, I was determined to rebuild my life. I moved out of the house, took the kids, and started fresh. The process of healing was slow, and I still carried scars. Trust was broken, and I'd been betrayed in ways I never imagined possible. But I also learned a lot about myself, my resilience, my ability to fight for what's right, and the importance of trusting my instincts. Looking back, I realize I made a lot of mistakes, but I also learned that sometimes you have to stand your ground against the most brutal betrayals. I learned that people can hide their true nature behind a facade, and you can't always see it coming until it's too late. But I also learned that truth has a way of coming out in the end, no matter how deep the lies run. You just have to be willing to fight for it. If I had one piece of advice for anyone going through something similar, it's this: don't let the betrayal define you. Gather your evidence, get help if you need it, and stay strong. The truth always emerges, and in the end, justice can be served, even if it takes a long, painful fight. I may have lost my marriage, but I gained clarity, strength, and the knowledge that I can survive even the worst betrayals. That's what really matters.